Thank you for attending this Connect Together event. During this event, we have automatic closed captioning available. Please go to the bottom of the Zoom meeting, click Live Transcript, and then Show Subtitles to turn them on. Before we begin, we'd like to take a quick moment to let you know how you can join an opinion research panel made specifically for British Columbians living with disabilities.
For 25 years, the Disability Foundation has been fostering meaningful experiences for Canadians with disabilities through outdoor recreation, social connectedness, innovative adaptive devices, and more. Today we are asking, how has the pandemic affected you? Help strengthen decision makers' understanding of your needs and experiences by joining an online opinion research panel consisting solely of people with disabilities and their caregivers. Make a difference in your community today. The Disability Foundation. Reimagine what is possible.
Did you know? Young adults with disabilities have a harder time getting hired. Break down barriers by sharing your story. Take our survey.
Thank you for watching that video. I will pass.
Maureen DeLandreville.
Jordan, carry on.
Oh, perfect. Well, hey folks, and Victor, should I go ahead and start sharing my screen here?
Yes, you can.
Okay, wonderful. Well, hey, Elizabeth and Maureen and Terry and Sasha, I can see a few of you on the session here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Now, if you'd be able to let me know either in the chat function or just by hopping off of mute, if you're able to see my screen, that would be super great.
Yeah,
it should say growing huge garlic.
Yeah, I can see it. It's Maureen.
Perfect. Hey, Maureen, thanks so much for that. Wonderful. Well, I'm really looking forward to our session here today. Just to kind of set the table here as we dive in, I really encourage everybody to kind of just like kick back and have a really fun workshop here. So if you're feeling like having a little snack while we go through it, by all means do so. Go ahead and sit anywhere where you're comfortable. And then any questions that you have over the course of our session, feel free to either hop off of mute if you're comfortable sharing them over the course of the audio or over the course of the call with audio, or if you're more comfortable typing them into the chat function, by all means, just go ahead and write those into the chat function and I'll be able to see those come through and I'll be able to pause, answer any of them. But really, really looking forward to our session here. I don't know if I've met any of you before. So for everybody, my name is Jordan. I'm the founder at Mind and Soil, and we're a gardening business based out of Squamish, British Columbia, Canada here. And our focus is a little bit different to most gardening businesses that you would probably come across, in that the primary thing that we are focused on is introducing and connecting 1 million individuals to gardening's mental health benefits. So if you're on the session here today, I have a feeling that you're a bit of a gardener, a bit of a fan. And if you're on the newer side to gardening, then what we want to be doing is help you get your hands dirty and ultimately experience just how peaceful, how calming, how restorative gardening can be. And we're huge, huge, huge believers that a big part of doing that is through education like this, helping people feel comfortable and confident in the garden, so it's as peaceful, as calming, as relaxing as possible. So for today's session, we are all going to be focused on garlic. It's one of my absolute favorite crops to be growing. And it's a really cool one because we get to start it right around now, in and around October, and then just kind of let it go dormant through the winter before then watching it go into its growth phase in the spring, and then ultimately harvesting as we get into the summer. If anybody has any experience with growing garlic, by all means, feel free to, again, share that over the audio or in the chat function. And if you're brand new to it as well, by all means, feel free to share that as well. This past season for me, it was hands down my absolute best garlic harvest that I have ever had. And what was really interesting was that there were about 5 or 6 really key important changes that I made this past season from previous that I believe allowed me to grow really, really beautiful garlic this past season. So what I want to walk through over the course of our workshop here today is some of those key changes and tweaks that I made over the course of the season to ultimately be growing this really beautiful garlic. And so we're going to get started right from the very beginning, go all through the season and wrap it up with harvesting. I'm going to take a quick little sip of my drink here, and then we are going to dive in with the very first one. Okay. So the very first piece that we need to be taking into consideration when it comes to growing beautiful heads of garlic is what variety is it that we are growing? And there's really 2 families of garlic. We've either got our soft neck garlics and we've got our hard neck garlics. And the one key difference between the 2 of these is that soft necks, they prefer a warmer environment. So this is if you went to a grocery store and you went to buy garlic there, then this is probably what you're going to be seeing in those grocery stores because it gets flown in from maybe down in California, some other warm climate. A couple of the really popular ones are California Early, Silver Rose, Silver White. Now, for those of us that might be in Canada or in cooler climates, soft neck varieties won't grow super well. And that's where there's the other family of garlics, which is the hard neck varieties. And a couple of the kind of very popular ones on this front include Italian, and then Majestic. I almost combined the 2 of them together there. And my personal favorite is red Russian garlic. It grows incredibly well up here in the cold climates and also gives off really big, beautiful heads of garlic. And so the first key decision that needs to be made in order to be successful with growing garlic is, okay, where am I living? And if it is kind of, zone 7, 6, 5 and lower, then you definitely want to be going with a hard neck variety. If you're in zone 8, 9, 10 above, then you'd want to be going with a soft neck variety. So again, hard neck in the lower and colder zones, and then soft neck in your warmer zones. Okay, so let's say that we've now grabbed our garlic, and we'll use the example of red Russian garlic today because that's what I'm going to be planting coming up here, and that's what we see in all the videos that are about to be coming up. And so now that we have got our garlic, the second piece that we need to be figuring out is location-wise, where do we want to plant it? And so if you take a look at this picture here, this is from 2 years ago in 2020. And I encourage you to guess where it is that I was planting my garlic at that point in time when I did not have a great crop. And for some of those experienced gardeners on the line here, you'll probably quickly guess that it was in the shade that I planted that garlic. The reason behind that was because I had just moved to my house here. I had been busy kind of setting everything up, doing some painting inside, getting moved in, and then I threw some garlic in the ground, but hadn't really even looked into like, how does the sun kind of move throughout my garden over the course of the year? And then in the springtime, I was like, yep, I planted that in probably the worst place that I could have. So when it comes to location, the key piece that you want to be taking into consideration is to plant your garlic somewhere where there is a lot of sun. So once again, for myself, that was down there the first year, big mistake. But then the second year, this past season, the 2021 growing year, well, you can actually see it right there in behind. That was where I planted it. And just based on how the sun moves throughout my yard from where my house is, that ends up being one of the sunniest beds in my backyard. So even though it was like, 5, 6 feet away, it ended up growing significantly better because of that sun that it was getting. And so my encouragement to you on this front is to find a location in your garden that gets a good amount of sun and dedicate a little bit of that to your garlic babies. Okay, so we've got our red Russian garlic, and we've now determined where in the garden we want to be planting that garlic. Well, the next thing that we need to do is we need to prep that soil for the garlic to go in there. And so what you can see here is that I am popping in a whole bunch of compost. So all that I did kind of in this instance here was I took my wheelbarrow and filled up about 1 to 2 inches worth of compost sitting on the top of that bed there. And then I just evened that out really nice and smoothly. And a big encouragement that I have for individuals is to, when it comes to adding compost, one, add a lot and a lot and a lot of it. Like we really cannot have too much compost in our beds, to the extent that I did a test this past season where I experimented with a soil blend versus just planting in 100% compost. And the things that were in 100% compost grew just as well, and some vegetables even better. So really work a great amount of compost into your beds there. If you're looking to establish a new garden plot, new garden box, or maybe even just a container, then, and you're thinking through how do I fill it up, a really great combination is 75% compost, 25% vermiculite. The vermiculite makes it a little bit softer, a little bit more airy, a little bit more drainage coming through there. And then after you have established that, each season you can be adding on more compost. And so the reason why compost works so well for garlic is, first of all, it's packed with nutrients. When we think about if we were adding peat moss in as an alternative, there's no nutritional value in peat moss. So with compost, we're getting all those nutrients in there that the plant is going to need to put to use. The second piece is that garlic, it loves a really, really loose soil for the roots to grow down and for the heads ultimately to develop in there as well. So by using compost, which is really high in organic matter, it ensures that we're building a really nice and loose and soft and light, kind of like bedding material for our garlic babies to be going into. And then the third piece is that it is essentially like the most sustainable option that you can be coming across. And lastly is that this should be something that you're doing on an ongoing basis. So I add compost into my garden beds every fall at the end of the gardening season, and then every springtime when we're getting ready for the spring and the summer rush. So that is the compost front. And we've now added that into the soil. So it's pretty much just about all set, all ready for us to actually be getting our garlic into the ground to begin to grow. And so what do we do when it comes to planting, which is the next piece that I want to be going through in our fourth step for today. And for each of these areas, I am going to be showing you a video on each of them just afterwards. So don't feel like you need to consume all this information at once. We're going to go through each one of these pieces with a video as well. So the first piece is spacing wise. Now with our head of red Russian garlic, we're then going to break it into little cloves. So you're going to pull off each one of the cloves, and that's what you plant. And we plant one of those every 6 inches. Okay, and I also mentioned there that you can do it in an off-width manner, which I'm going to show you in the video. Once we've measured out our 6 inches, we're going down 4 inches in depth. So because we are putting that into the ground in the fall, we want to plant them a little bit deeper because we want that soil, that compost above, to insulate it and allow the roots to continue to develop over the course of the winter without freezing from the cold weather, cold air that's going to be on the top of the surface there. Once we've dug our hole down 4 inches, I encourage you to add some worm castings in there. That's one of the things that we, is kind of involved in all the products that we sell at Mind and Soil is worm castings, worm castings, worm castings. They're really, really great for the garden. And then when it comes to mulching, I really encourage you to add 2 to 3 inches of leaves onto your garden beds there. And with those leaves, that's once again going to provide a little bit more insulation sitting across the top of the surface. And lastly, timing wise, we are into garlic planting, garlic gardening season right now. And so if any of you are interested, we are going to be planting our garlic on October 20th. Now, the reason why we're doing October 20th is because there's a kind of old folklore or farmer's tale that planting on the October full moon is the absolute best time to be doing it, to be getting those big and beautiful heads of garlic. So we're going to do that. I totally encourage and would love to invite you to be planting yours in your garden beds alongside us. We're going to be doing it with individuals through our community all across Canada. And then individuals will share different pictures with one another coming out of that. So if you do plant your garlic on October 20th, please make sure that there's some pictures coming from that and send those over to me. I'm jordan@mindandsoil.com and would absolutely love to see those pictures. Okay. So let's now go through each of these steps so you can see what this looks like to get those garlic cloves into the ground in a way that is going to allow them to grow super well. So with that same bed that I just showed you, the next thing that we're going to do is that we are going to space out the cloves 6 inches from one another. So you can see I'm using my hori knife and I'm just going 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches. Now, I mentioned a second ago that we can do this thing called off center. And so what that is that we can see the first hole is right here. And then the next one is 6 inches this way. And from this first hole coming kind of height wise, we're 6 inches up here. So 6 inches, 6 inches. Off center means that you can plant one off center right in the middle of those. So this ends up being 3 inches to that one, 3 inches to that one, and 3 inches to that one. And it allows you to just get more garlic cloves into the same square footage that you would have been growing. So if you have, you know, kind of a smaller space, or if you really love garlic and you want to absolutely maximize it, don't be afraid to put that kind of that extra one in there in an off center manner. Okay, so we've now measured out the holes. The next thing that we wanted to be doing is grab those worm castings. And so we're going to grab our worm castings, and you're going to take about half of a handful, and you're going to just pour that into each one of those holes. So as you can see here, I poured a little bit in, I work it in with my hori knife, over to the next one, and then over to the third one there, just ensuring that each hole that I'm going to be planting a garlic clove into ultimately has some worm castings in it. Perfect. So obviously when I was doing that as well, I was going 4 inches down there, which is the depth piece that we were talking about a little bit earlier on. So that means that the next thing that we want to be doing is actually grabbing our garlic cloves and popping them in there. And as you can see, all I'm doing is going right back to those holes that I dug down 4 inches and I put the worm castings into, and I'm just popping the cloves in now and then backfilling with the surrounding soil. And so those babies, they've now got a nice kind of 2, 3, 4 inches of soil compost sitting over top of them, that nice bit of insulation. They've got the worm castings that's going to give them some nutritions plus some microbes to be growing nice and big and healthy over the course of the winter here. So we're just about all done for the planting phase. The last thing that we need to be doing is our mulching. And so this is where we're going to want to grab some leaves, and we're going to want to put down about 2 to 3 inches worth. So what you can see there is I just kind of dumped a big tote on top there, and then I'm just gently spreading those around to ensure that's all covered. And look at those babies with a nice little mulch blanket sitting over top of them. They are set up to have an amazing winter and be all kind of ready to go as we get to the warmer weather in the springtime. So we are now going to start diving into the spring side of garlic growing and garlic planting. But if you have any questions, please, once again, feel free, if you would prefer to be hopping off of mute and to be sharing over audio, by all means, hop off of mute, interrupt me. Or if you prefer to share any questions that you do have in the chat function, by all means, share those in the chat function. I can see anything that comes through, and we'll be all good on that front.
Jordan, it's Terry. How do you keep your mulch from blowing away?
Amazing question. And sorry, that was Gary, was that right?
Terry.
Terry.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, great question there. And what I would do in an instance like that is if you have any extra landscape fabric, or if you have any cardboard boxes, is putting something like that over top of the bed, and then taking, say, some rocks or something heavy and putting that on the corners. That's a great way to cover over top of it, still allow airflow to come through, a little bit of moisture to get through as well, but now the leaves aren't going to be flying away.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you know, that's one of those I'd put into kind of like the additional steps. It's something that I do. And so if you're feeling up to it, by all means, I encourage you to do so. One of the real nice added benefits of that is that as we get those rains through the winter, if it's cardboard, if it's landscape fabric, what you'll notice is that some of that rain just trickles off to the side. So it's not running through the soil. And what that then means is that more of those nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium, they're not getting rinsed out, washed away. They're all staying in there and serving the plants for a longer period of time.
Good point. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Amazing question. I'm just going to stay paused here just in case there's any other questions that come through. And then we'll dive into the spring growth phase. Okay. So we put our babies to sleep there in the fall. They got their nice mulch blanket on top of them. And that's where we then get to just kind of relax over the course of the winter, knowing that we have done everything that we need to for them to be set up for success. And if you've kind of made it this far and you've made it and are still on board, then believe me, like once you've done the fall piece, that's the majority of the work with garlic. And this is one of the reasons why I love garlic so much, is that like it is a very, very, very low maintenance crop. There isn't any like pruning, trellising, staking, anything along those lines. There's just a couple of really key kind of moments or days throughout the season where we need to be doing a couple things. And so as we get into the springtime, that's where we're going to notice our first signs of growth. And this generally happens depending on where you live. So if you're in, a bit of a warmer climate, such as like down in Delta or Surrey, Tawasin, then it's going to be a little bit earlier, like probably even into like late January. For myself over in Squamish, it's usually kind of like first, second week of February. And if you're somewhere else across Canada, then it could be a little bit later, like late February or even into early March. The thing that I do, because I'm very much kind of all over my little plant babies, is that as we get into like late January, is I start going down to the mulch and I start kind of moving it to the side, seeing if I can see any of those initial and early signs of life from our garlic babies. And so sure enough, here I can see those first little stems shooting through the surface. So if you're feeling like it, I just brought in a whole bunch of my pepper plants that I'm now going to be overwintering over the course of this winter. So a fun fact is that peppers are actually perennials, meaning that you can bring them indoors and they will then grow all through the winter, and then you put them right back into your garden beds. But with that, you prune them back quite a bit. So like every morning right now, I'm over there looking at my pepper babies, seeing if they started putting on any like tiniest millimeters of growth, just because I want to make sure that they're doing all good. And so the same thing happens with my garlic here. And we can chat more about peppers towards the end if anybody's interested on that. But the key moment that comes for garlic is probably a little bit closer to March 1st. So at some point through March, when your babies have come through the surface like this, we then want to really help them go into growth mode. And so what you can see is I'm actually pulling that leaf mulch off. And Terry, as you take a look here, you can see that I've got that landscape fabric covering the rest of that bed. And so all I'm doing is I'm pulling that leaf mulch off because I now want to give them some fertilizer as well as some more compost. So once I've pulled all the leaf mulch off, the next thing that we do is we grab a natural organic fertilizer. For us, we have our own product, which is called our 444 superfood. And all that you would need to do with something like that is just take kind of about 1 tablespoon around the base of that plant, put it just as a top dressing around the main stem, and then massage it into the top 1 inch of soil or so. And this is now giving a huge bump of nutrients. Again, it's a 444, so nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And it's basically like a really well, all balanced macronutrient plus micronutrient feed that's completely natural and organic to be getting into the soil. And then once we've massaged it in, we're going to water it. And that's going to move those nutrients down into the root zone where the plant is going to be able to put them to use. So we've worked in our superfood. The last thing that we need to be doing here is then just putting some compost over top of it. And so I'm going back to the bed. And as you can see on the back side there, I'm now adding about 1 to 2 more inches of compost. And so I've switched from a leaf mulch to a compost mulch here. The reason why I'm doing this is because this 1 to 2 inches of compost that you can see me putting down right now, that is going to be providing a little bit more kind of warmth to those plants, but then it's also going to be providing a whole bunch of nutrients versus the leaves. That's just like 100% carbon. And so a compost, it's got more of the nutrients that are really going to help the plant grow as we get into these warmer and longer and sunnier days over the course of March, April, May, June, etc. And so with that, with the superfood plus the compost mulch, these babies are set up to now really go into their growth spurt. And so before you know it, they are going to be looking like this. If you follow each of the steps that we've gone through so far, the garlic babies in your beds, your containers, are going to be looking like this, beautiful, lush, and full of life. And we know that we're coming to the end of our growth phase, right before the harvest phase, when we see the garlic scapes. So garlic scapes are going to be coming out of the top of each one of our garlic plants. And if we left these on the plant, this is ultimately where new garlic seeds are going to be coming from. But it takes a lot of energy away from the bulb development beneath the surface. And that's what we're looking for. We really want those big, beautiful heads of garlic. So the way that we help kind of promote that growth beneath the surface opposed to the top is that we cut all of our garlic scapes. So all that you need to do is you go to each one of your plants with your pruning shears, and you just follow the main stem. Again, this is going to be kind of late June, early July. And you look for the garlic scape that's kind of twirling around in a circle, and you can chop that off as high or as low on it. I like to cut probably a good like 14 to 16 inches of it off, leaving the leaves on the plant, but just popping off the garlic scape there. And with these garlic scapes, one of the really kind of great things about them is they're absolutely delicious. So once you've cut them off, feel free to use them in a pesto, feel free to use them in a stir fry, grill them up. They're really, really delicious eating. And so it's kind of nice because it's like the first little harvest that we get to enjoy from our garlic babies. It's a nice, like mild garlic flavor to it. And so now that we have chopped those garlic scapes off, we are right on the brink, kind of right on the eve of ultimately harvesting our babies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for just a second, and any questions, feel free to send those through on chat or hop off of mute, whichever one works. And then after those, we'll go ahead and we'll dive right into harvesting. So I'm just going to have a quick sip of my coffee here, but any questions, feel free to ask them. All righty. Well, I think we're all good for the moment. If you do have any questions, then by all means, like do send those through. I can get to them as we kind of get around the corner from harvesting as well. So by all means, as I continue along, if there's a question that you are looking to ask, still do jump in, chime in at any time there. Perfect. So now what the question really becomes like, when do we harvest our garlic? And it's one of those areas, and one of the beautiful parts about gardening, right, is that like we all live in different macroclimates and different microclimates where it's going to vary for each and every one of us a little bit, because it could be a little bit warmer where one person lived. One person could have had more rain and it could be a little bit further behind. So the thing that we want to be looking for is signs and indications from the plant itself. And for garlic, we know that it is time to harvest once 3 to 4 of the leaves have died off. So now those same garlic babies that I've been showing you through the course of our session here, what we can see is that it now has 1 dead leaf, a 2nd dead leaf, a 3rd dead leaf, and then a 4th dead leaf there. So I know that this baby, it's got 3 to 4 leaves that have died off. It is now all set and ready to be harvested. And so the next video that I have here is probably my absolute favorite day of the year. And that is garlic harvesting day, because they're such a cool plant from the perspective of you can kind of tell from the stem how it's growing, but you never know how big, how beautiful that head of garlic is beneath the surface until you harvest it. It's kind of like a birthday present or something along those lines from the garden to you. So I knew that there were some heads in my garden this past season that, you know, I kind of suspected they had all the signs that they were going to be really beautiful heads of garlic. So before I started to harvest them, I decided to set my camera up in a way that would allow me to really see the harvest there. And I wanted to show you that video now. So for harvesting, all that you need to do is you just pop your knife underneath nice and deep and then give it a good yank. So there we go. And pop. So look at just like the root system on that garlic baby and just how big that head of garlic is there. Sasha, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, super, super beautiful, like head of garlic, so healthy. And, again, why did it grow so well here? Well, we're only getting a root system like that if we had a beautiful environment for it to be growing in from the very beginning. It had that really rich and loose, fluffy soil to be growing in. So as the plant was getting ready to start putting on its roots, it was super easy for them to spread. And if we've got a really good root zone like that, well, then the bulb, it's got everything that it needs to begin to put on its growth. And then if we chop off those garlic scapes, well, then any extra energy, it's going right back into that bulb as well. So by following each of the steps that we walk through here today, I'm so confident that you'll be able to grow beautiful heads of garlic like this. And just to kind of put this one into perspective here, I ended up putting it into my hand, and that head of garlic was nearly the size of my palm there. So a really, really beautiful season here and beautiful head of garlic. And I'm, absolutely kind of chomping at the bit and super excited to be getting my garlic into my garden beds in about 2 weeks' time here on October 20th. So folks, that's everything that I wanted to cover off on here today. Really, really appreciate the questions that have come through there. Sasha, thank you for the comment there. And just wanted to pause for a moment, see if there's any other questions here. And then Victory, I am more than happy to pass it over to you to begin wrapping up.
Hi, Jordan. My name's Elizabeth, and I belong to DIGA, and I've attended your other workshops with the that you've done with West Coast Seeds, and I've done a couple of your classes, and I've really enjoyed it.
Amazing. So this isn't your first one?
No, it isn't my first one, but I actually suggested, like, I've been to your workshops, and I actually suggested to Victory a week or so ago that maybe we should have you do a workshop.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you so much for that. I massively, massively appreciate that. And I love the fact that you've been on some of the other happy hours. That's like, oh, that's making my day here.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed them.
Amazing. Well, thank you. No, thank you so much for the kind words there. Are there any happy hour topics that you'd be keen for me to go over or to cover off on at some point?
I can't think of any, but if I think of any, I'll let you know, because I've got your Instagram and I've got your contact info. So
there we go. You're on top of it. Yeah. And so by all means, folks, if anybody has any questions at any point throughout the gardening season, whether that's garlic related or any other plant, please send those through to me by email, jordan@mindandsoil.com, or our Instagram account is just @mindandsoil. Going back to what I mentioned at the very beginning, we want to introduce individuals to gardening to feel and to experience just how peaceful, how calming, how restorative it is. And a big thing that I know is that when you try something new for the first time, it can be a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming. And that's ultimately like the last thing that we want to be feeling in the garden. And the way that we get past those is through education like this. So any questions, any way that I can help, please do reach out. You'll get a response directly from me. Would love to help everybody grow any way that I can.
Jordan, it's Terry here again. I love the October 20th tip, mainly because growing up in the Maritimes, we always planted at the last full moon in May. That was when we put our seedlings out. So
wow.
It's nice to have that October date.
Yeah, and Terry, would that be your seedlings that you'd then be growing through the summer, or your garlic seeds?
Oh no, that's the seedlings through the summer. Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah. For instance, I planted my garlic, I think a few weeks ago now. I guess I got it in a little too early.
No, you didn't at all. You didn't at all. Anytime from, kind of in September, really all the way through to November is totally good for garlic. And this is one of the beautiful things about it is that, like, it by no means is like a 1 day or 5 day window. Like we've got 6+ weeks where if anybody gets the garlic in the ground during that kind of September to November window, then you're in a great position. And some of the individuals in our community, Terry, they're in the same position as you where they've already put their garlic in, but they're like, we want to be planting on the 20th just to be a part of this with everybody else. And so they're going to grab like one more head of garlic, pop some of those in alongside, just to be a part of it as kind of near or far as they may be across Canada.
Yeah, that was great. As I've got one head left and I've got one garden bed that I haven't done. So I'll do that on the 20th.
Well, Terry, my email address is right there and I'm been waiting for the picture.
Yeah. Right. I'll send you a DIGA picture.
Love it. Please, please do. Perfect. Well, I think that might.
Jordan, I have a question. Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yes. Hi, Jordan. Thank you. It's good to see. It looks so easy to do, and it's rewarding too to see your little babies growing, and then the fabulous how gigantic or how garlic, how it looks when you pull it out. Do you how do you start it off? Like from seed first, or do you have to buy the little bulbs first?
Yeah, so if you have a head of garlic, and give me 1 second here. I'm going to grab one real quick, okay? 20 seconds.
Sure. Thanks.
Oh, Jordan went to the grocery store.
No. I went to dig into my secret stash of these are like my biggest heads of garlic. So one extra like little tip is that if you hold on to your biggest heads of garlic, your biggest cloves, those ones, then you're kind of passing the genetics along, and that's another way to get each season bigger and bigger, beautiful heads of garlic. And so what you would do, I'm just going to use this one here, is that like you've got your head of garlic like this. And so each of the cloves that you're going to want to plant individually. So all that you do is you just grab the clove here and you pop it off from the head. And then you can take the outside layer off, but you don't want to take off the paper that is around the clove. So don't make it completely bare like you're about to cook up a meal. Just break it off from the main head. And then the flat side, that's where the roots come out of. That's going to be pointing down, and the pointy side, that's going to be facing up. And you do that 4 inches down in the ground.
I see, 4 inches. Nice.
More garlic.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I was talking to someone else there. Sorry, Jordan.
No problem.
Yeah. Thanks for how you prepare. You don't want to invert it like the pointed one is just so you can grow from that cloves. So thank you for showing me that. And what about the I didn't write the name of it. The something worm, Pete, or worm, a bag of. I thought I have to buy worms. Just the word worms. So it looks like I don't know how to word it, like soils, little soils.
Yeah, so
little pebbles of soils. Is that how it feels? I don't know. It looks organic.
Yeah, what it is, it's called worm castings, and it's literally the poop from worms. And so what the worms do is they eat through all of the essentially like compost or organic matters. So that could be stuff from kitchen, etc. And when they eat it, they break it down because their mouths are so small. It gets
thanks. So do you buy that from like do you buy that from Garden Works or a garden store, or are they expensive to buy? I mean, and then the compost, you have to buy the compost too?
So you can make
one question at a time. Sorry, yeah.
No, it's good. It's perfect. So as an example, like for myself as an individual, I've got my own composting that I do here on my own, and then I have my own worm farm as well. But then
Yeah.
for someone like yourself that may not have compost or a worm farm, that's where, yeah, you can purchase compost and you can purchase worm castings to then be utilizing in and throughout your garden.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I don't have the strength and to really, the black where you put everything inside the compost, the bin, or no, a compost. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can, and then it creates its own compost. So what happens if it's like cutting hair, like you have to cut hair like regularly. And what happens if I've forgotten to use something to mush it, or I don't have the strength to do that, and then it hardens up. So is that a lost cause for me? I mean, is that compost gone?
No.
Can't use that anymore. I don't know how to get it out now.
Yeah, no. So it's moving it around. That's active composting. And what that's doing is that's primarily just going to break it down more quickly than if you were letting it just sit there. But if you let it sit there, it's still going to break down and turn into beautiful compost.
So, I hope so. I was kind of crying internally. It says, "Oh no, but that's an expensive, the black or the black thing. I mean, the black plastic thing. I don't know what it's called, but you sure? So if you don't mix it around, it will still be okay."
Absolutely. And believe me, you might have been crying internally, but I've been crying externally over top of my plants, my compost pile, my worm farm before. So don't worry, I've been there.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, I hope so. I haven't opened it up yet, so I hope it can still be open. And also thank you, Jordan. And let's maybe this is a mistake of mine. You see the wood. What happens if it's that means it's not good. That's why I've stopped planting. Now I just plant flowers in it. The wooden. It's like you're sitting on it, but mine's treated. So if it's treated, I thought that I'm going to get cancer because that's going to go inside the soil, and then it's going to go inside the onions or the tomatoes or whatever that I plant inside that box of treated woods. It looks like that, but it's treated. So what's your opinion on that, Jordan?
Yeah, they've done a lot of research on this actually, and you can use treated wood for building raised boxes. There hasn't been any signs of there being anything kind of seeping from that into the soil. So
that's good news. You sure? Because my mom said, no, you're gonna get a cancer. You don't plant anything in there. Because it's treated. Yeah.
All the beds that I have, they've got treated wood that I've used, and I'm still standing here. So it's working for me.
Okay, well that's good because I don't want to deteriorate. I want to plant some more things in it. Oh well, that's a new answers for me. So that kind of gives me hopes. But I hope there's been research done and it's still good, and you're still alive. So
still alive. I'm still alive.
Yes.
And then if you did have any concern, what you can always do is you can always put like some plastic on the inside before you fill it with soil.
That's too bad. It already has soil now. See, so I don't know how to actually.
I wouldn't even worry about it. I would just you're all good as is, and just enjoy getting into the gardening.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you for answering that question, Jordan.
My pleasure. I saw a question from Sasha that came through, and I'd love also to hear from anybody in terms of what their answer would be on this one. But Sasha asked, what's your favorite garlic-based recipe to make with your harvest? So that's a great question, because garlic is definitely one of my favorite crops to grow because I use so much of it. Like I did, I think 60 heads this past year, and like I've already worked through a pretty significant amount of it. And so honestly, one thing that I love doing is when I'm cooking up a meal, if I'm throwing something in the oven, is to take a head of garlic, cut just like the very top of it off so that the heads are just exposed, and then leave all the skin on, put a little bit of olive oil over top, salt and pepper, and roast the whole head of garlic, and then just eat the individual cloves once they've roasted for like 45 minutes. They're so nice and mellow flavor. It completely changes from like that garlic breath sharpness to something really nice and beautiful and mellow. So if I was having garlic on its own, that's how I would do it. If I was using it in a recipe, I would have to say I absolutely love pesto. And so the amount of pesto and the amount of basil that I grow, it's like my stove when I harvest it all, it's like a mountain that sits on the top there of all of the plants and all the leaves. And I end up processing it into probably close to like 35 pounds worth of pesto using the garlic from the garden as well. And then what I do, because that's a lot of pesto, like that will last me all winter into next season, is I take like an ice cream scoop or a big spoon, and I take a spoonful of that pesto, I put it onto a cookie sheet, and I do about 12 of those. And then I put those little pesto pucks on the cookie sheet into the freezer. And so it freezes as an individual puck. And then I put all those into a little kind of like plastic bag and in the freezer. And so now anytime that I want pesto through the fall, the winter, the spring, I just grab one of my pesto pucks out of the bag, put it into a pasta, and I'm all set with nice, beautiful pesto there. So that would be my favorite. I'd love to hear if anybody has any favorite uses of garlic on their end as well.
Suddenly I'm hungry.
Yeah, garlic's really good for you too. No wonder you look so healthy. And fit too, because this is organic gardening and things like that. Jordan, you say this garlic, it's low maintenance. Do you have to water it regularly, once, like twice a day, like one, or because it would dry up and then it wouldn't be so bountiful. I don't know, it wouldn't be so full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great question there. And so watering, it's challenging to discuss because it varies so much for every one of us. And so I don't want anybody to stress or worry about watering and doing something terribly wrong, because that won't happen. Let's break it into 3 phases. So that first phase, the planting phase, when we're putting them into the ground, and we just want them to be dormant through the winter. But also what's happening over the course of the fall and the winter is that's the rainiest time. And so I don't water a single time. All through from the point that I put them in the ground until we get into the growth phase. So I do 0 watering in phase number 1. Now in the growth phase, that's going to be, again, kind of like March, April, May, and June. It really depends on how sunny it is. And so say this past season, we hardly got any rain whatsoever. And so in that instance, I had my irrigation system set up and I turned that on for 30 minutes per day. And that was, enough water for them to be receiving.
I see. Yes. Wow.
If you're growing in a container, it will end up being a little bit less because the water stays in there for a little bit longer than in a raised bed where it can kind of flow out a little bit easier. And so my encouragement on the watering front is to pay attention to how much it has rained and then observe your plant. And so there's 2 things that we want to be looking at. We want to be looking at the leaves and we want to be looking at the soil. Now, if you use worm castings and compost and superfood or some form of a fertilizer, then our leaves shouldn't be looking yellow until we get into late June and then into July. And so if you notice that your leaves are a little bit yellow, that's probably a sign that's not quite getting enough water because it has all of the food that it would need from the compost, the worm castings, and the superfood. And I would increase the watering then. Second piece that you would look into is if you go down to the soil and you put your finger down kind of 1 to 2 inches deep. And if you're noticing that it's dry, then that's the time to be giving it another really good watering. So Those are the factors that you want to be looking at, and they're going to be different for each one of us based on what type of container we're growing in, and then also where we live and how much rain we're getting and how warm it has been. And so then the third and final piece is kind of the harvest phase. And what you want to do is about 10 days before you harvest. So you cut your garlic scapes off, and then maybe wait about 7 days, and you continue to water regularly there. Then those last 10 to 14 days, turn off the water. So now we really want to kind of stress the plant a little bit and have it focus all of its energy on developing cloves to pass along its genetics. So the last stretch, you actually turn off the water once again.
Wow, sound like a doctor there. Sounds awesome. Whoa, really into this, and make sure you know that. Thank you very much. It's wonderful. And I see that in the bucket. I mean, and it looks like kale. So do you plant kale?
I plant a whole lot of things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're going to have to join for our garden planning workshop that we're going to be doing in probably like January or so. And at that time, I walk through my plan for the year. But for this season, I grew. I'm just going to kind of go through my brain in terms of my layout of my bed. So I grew cucumbers, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, horseradish, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cabbage, sunflowers, kale, Swiss chard, arugula, garlic, beets, carrots, peppers, tomatoes, zucchinis, basil, strawberries, and rhubarb.
Oh, wow. You should have your own like grocery stores. Wow.
Well,
healthy.
Yeah, if you see behind me here, here's some of the stuff. And I've got cupboards upstairs that are completely full with everything that I've canned. And then my freezer in the garage is also full with a whole bunch of stuff to be
inspirational. Yeah, wow.
Thank you. It's taken about 5-6 years worth of gardening to get to this point where I now have like a table full of food. So my big encouragement to folks, like my very first year of gardening, I got 1 tomato off of my plant. But I didn't focus at all on trying to get a huge yield. I was just loving how relaxing and how soothing it was to spend time in nature and to relax. Yeah. So that drew me in. I was like, I want more gardening space so that I can have an excuse to be spending more time out here because I'm so happy when I'm in my garden. And so now when I was buying my house, like the number one requirement was it had to have a good amount of space for gardening. And so I'm just now getting ready and get started on a big project in my backyard to kind of connect the whole garden. So it's going to be really cool doing that garden planning session next season because I'll be able to show the new garden setup that I have at that point.
Wow.
Yeah. And Sasha, thank you so much for the kind words there. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy that you got so much from this. And Sasha, I hope that we have you on more happy hours and little workshops coming up as well here. Awesome. Any other last questions before we wrap up?
No.
Amazing. These are great questions from everyone.
And it was a very informative program. Thank you, Jordan.
Yes. Thank you, Jordan.
I agree, Jordan. That was wonderful.
Yes. Nice to hear Terry too. And Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Remember square dancing I have done with you? Remember, are you that Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Yeah. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Jordan. Like I said, I always look forward to all your workshops. So.
Amazing. Well, love having you on them. And this definitely won't be the last, that's for sure.
And speaking of kale, in my DIGA garden bed this year, well, actually last fall, we planted kale there and we grew it over the winter. And
Jordan at Mind and
we still have it in our garden this year, and it grew over to be 3 feet tall.
Amazing. I love that. Yeah, kale is a really cool one where you can overwinter it. So it does well in the cold weathers. And the leaves, they almost get a little bit sweeter and richer with flavor in the fall and the winter compared to the really hot days in the summer. So I love to hear that.
Yeah.
And Jordan, this is being recorded, correct? Because I've been making notes like crazy, but I haven't got everything.
Yes, it is. And on top of that, if you go to YouTube and you look up Mind and Soil, so right there, MIND and soil, or you could use, I don't even remember the word for that and symbol.
Ampersand.
That's the one. I should know it since it's in our logo. But we put out a new video on YouTube every single week. And so we just did a couple on garlic in case you want to do a more condensed version of what we've gone through today. But then also we just put one out on overwintering peppers as well. So lots that you can be going through there.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. And then every Thursday we put out a new one.
Well, I better have no plans except gardening.
That's my kind of living.
Nice to hear you. Hi, Maureen.
Hi.
Hi. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Jordan. This is very informative. Thank you.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I agree with how great it felt. Like, you're staying away from everybody, but getting out in the garden was such a relief.
Was it ever? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that one, and it's definitely where I go to clear my mind and find some peace and some joy.
My mom does flowers, instead of because I guess it takes maybe too much work for her, like to weed, like the tomatoes and the green onions or something. But she has she has beautiful flowers, like different kinds of flowers. So and then and I have more difficulty crouching down now because of my disability. So but it's good to have that feeling when you worked at it, and then it just says, wow, you see the results, and then you can make food out of it, and then it says, wow, and then you can grow more vegetables. So thank you for your time to showing how the beautiful side of gardening.
My absolute pleasure, and absolutely, I love to hear that. And flowers are totally good as well. Perfect.
One quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it the garlic's 6 inches apart, 4 inches deep?
That's right. Yep.
Right. Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Got it. And if you did them 4 inches apart and 6 inches deep, I think you'd still be pretty good.
Well, no, I'm going to do it perfectly. I want to have what you had.
Love it. Perfect.
All right.
Well, we see you next Friday, Jordan.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to do a little bit on wrapping up the garden beds for the season and how to kind of put them to sleep so that they get rejuvenated and recharged for the season ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought this is the last one. You mean you have another one next Friday?
Oh yeah, Sheena, this is only the first one.
Yes.
I'm so. Well, this is great. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I can make it, then I'll tune in and just see, the wonders of food, because vegetables.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Love it.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank
We're
you.
going to stop the recording now.
Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you, Maureen, everybody, Elizabeth, and Terry.
Thank you.
She's
Thanks, Sheena.
You're welcome.